Hi, I'm Dan. This is Vinyl Fury, and I once again have a few more records to show that I've acquired fairly recently. So, a couple videos back, I showed a couple of Metallica reissues. The first that I've ever gotten. Never had Metallica on vinyl. But apparently these last round of reissues, at least in the last 5 years, there's been a remaster in 2017, 2018, and then there's been reissues of those in the last couple of years, including Master of Puppets. So this is a 2022 reissue. It's on black vinyl, and it's a new cut done at Black Belt Mastering. So previously, it was cut by Chris Bellman from a new remaster. So I can't imagine there would have been new files remastered for this rather than just that latest remaster recut for whatever reason, and not by Chris Bellman for whatever reason. I'm not quite clear on that. But the Discogs reviews for this pressing were fairly glowing. And I have to say, I ultimately agree. At first, I wasn't quite sure because, this album's a little bit long for one single LP. It's really pushing the time limits, fidelity-wise. So you got to turn it up a bit louder than you normally would. Once you do, it kind of rips. There was several times where I was, headbanging. To my memory of the songs, it did seem like they had a bit more balls, I'll say. There was a bit more energy in the low end, and I could actually pick out some bass guitar riffs, which, at least in these earlier albums, is not really, in my experience, what you pick out. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, once I was a couple songs in and I turned it up just a little bit more, I did agree that it does sound pretty good, especially for what we're working with here. And after I played that Ride the Lightning, and I already had the Black Album reissue, I thought, well, I'm not just going to have those two. Guess I better go back to where I got those and get Master of Puppets, because I think this might actually be my favorite Metallica album. I actually learned, or came a long way in learning how to play guitar by learning a lot of these riffs. Battery, Master of Puppets, Sanitarium. I played those a lot, and they're I found them surprisingly easy to get a hold of. I can't rip those solos, but I caught on to those riffs pretty well, and I'm much more of a rhythm guitarist than anything. So I really found myself getting the hang of palm muting and moving around the fretboard in a timely manner. All that to say, I think this actually is my favorite Metallica record. Black Album is definitely the one I've heard the most. I do like a lot of those songs. Has a special place, but if I'm going to reach for Metallica, this is probably number one. And just briefly, I also showed in that video a couple back this Mississippi John Hurt 1928 sessions. It's on red vinyl. It is a collection of his first. He made a bunch of recordings that were released on 78s back then. And then, as I understand it, kind of disappeared. And eventually, in the early 60s, somebody decided to track him down. And they did, successfully. And he made a bunch more recordings, several more albums in the 60s, which are fantastic. So this is the beginning of Mississippi John Hurt. And these are taken from those 78s, restored. And so they have that 78 sound, more surface noise than you'd like to hear. But all things considered, they actually sound pretty good. And the music was, of course, very, very enjoyable. Folk blues. He's such a great guitar player. He can play so much, so smoothly. And I also really enjoy his voice. And I haven't heard these songs or these recordings very much, so I am glad to have this collection. For $15, all around, it was very acceptable. So this is Neil Larson, his second album, High Gear. That is 1979. We're definitely heading into the 80s here, just by the look of it. And I used to have his first album, and I got rid of it at some point. I'm not really sure why. I remember thinking it was pretty all right, at least. This I think I like better, and I'm going to hang on to it. It's a decently interesting jazz rock fusion album. Sounds good. This was like $2. And this is also a gold stamp promo. So I also recently found this reissue of In a Silent Way by Miles Davis. From my assumption, it's a 70s reissue. I don't really know when. Discogs didn't give an exact year, but it was in great condition for $20, and I did not have this, and I wasn't even really sure what kind of Miles Davis this was. But I do think it's kind of the turning point into his electric period, if I remember right. And you got Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Wayne Shorter, and John McLaughlin on this thing. So that's amazing. And Chick Corea definitely has a pretty solid and noticeable place on this record. Great pickup. And lastly, someone who I was not familiar with, but just looked like the kind of vibe I would enjoy. So his name is Pierre Bensusan, I believe. And this is a compilation of his first 2 records reissued by a label that I'm not certain I was familiar with before. It's Lost Lake Arts, which is a subsidiary of Windham Hill, which of course I am very familiar with. So I guess Lost Lake was their reissue label of titles that were out of print that fit their vibe. And they very much do. So he is a guitar player who plays in, at least traditionally, DADGAD, D-A-D-G-A-D. It's an open tuning, kind of a Celtic vibe to it. That's what this music has. And I really like it. I love playing in DADGAD. It's really fun, and you can get some really beautiful sounds out of it. This one is called Musiques. This, I think, is from 1979, and it's first press on Rounder Records. So yeah, great, like folk jazz, kind of. That's what it sounds like to me. So there's another batch. I can't believe how many more I have on this list that I've made and that I've taken notes on for what I've listened to so far. There's a lot more to listen to, but I should be back with some more fairly soon. So thanks for watching this. Take care. Enjoy your music.